They think it's chaos, loud, messy, unpredictable. But you see the pattern, don't you? Every move calculated, every silence louder than their screams. While they were busy underestimating you, something shifted in the shadows. Not luck, not coincidence. Precision, a system forming around you, tightening like a noose they never saw coming. Mutt, you're not chasing your enemies anymore. Something else is quiet, efficient, unseen, like elite forces moving through the dark, erasing names, breaking alliances, turning their confidence into confusion. One by one, the noise disappears. No warnings, no second chances, just outcomes. And the funny part? They still think they're in control, still think they understand the game. But this isn't their board anymore. Every step they take, already anticipated. Every move, already countered. They're reacting now, scrambling, watching everything fall apart without knowing why. Meanwhile, you've stepped into a different circle. Not the kind you can see, the kind that sees you. Eyes everywhere, attention building, energy spreading like a virus through the system, people watching, talking, not because you asked them to, but because they can't ignore what's happening around you. You didn't become louder. You became inevitable. They walk around like they own the board, like every move they make bends reality in their favor. You've seen it before, confidence so loud it drowns out logic. They believe control is something you grab, something you show off, something you prove to the world with noise and dominance. But control doesn't work like that. It never did. What they're holding on to. It's not power. It's a fragile illusion, stitched together by habit, ego, and the desperate need to feel untouchable. Bands watch closely, and you start to see the cracks. Not big ones at first, just tiny fractures in the way they react, the way they hesitate when something doesn't go according to their script. Because deep down, they rely on predictability. They need the world to behave a certain way so they can keep pretending they're in charge. The moment that pattern shifts, even slightly, their confidence starts to shake. Not outwardly, of course. They'll smile, laugh it off, act like nothing's wrong. But inside, something starts unraveling. That's where the illusion begins to break. You stopped playing by their expectations. Quietly. No announcements, no dramatic exits. Just a shift in how you move, how you think, how you respond. You became unpredictable in a way they can't measure, and that terrifies them more than any direct confrontation ever could, because they can't control what they don't understand. They can't dominate what refuses to follow their rules. So they start guessing, overthinking, second-guessing every step they take around you. What used to feel easy for them now feels uncertain. They hesitate where they used to act. They question where they used to command. And every second of that hesitation chips away at the illusion they built around themselves. Control was never about force. It was never about being the loudest voice in the room or the most aggressive presence in the space. Real control is subtle. It's quiet. It's the ability to influence outcomes without announcing your intentions. And once you understand that, the entire game changes. They're still trying to win the old way, still trying to overpower, to outshine, to outmaneuver in ways that only work when the system stays predictable. But you've already stepped outside that system. You're not reacting anymore. You're observing, adjusting, letting them expose themselves through their own patterns, you know? And the more they try to tighten their grip, the more it slips. And because control based on fear, dominance, and ego can only last so long. It depends on others playing along, believing in the same illusion. The moment someone stops believing, the entire structure starts to collapse, not all at once. Slowly, quietly, almost invisibly, they'll blame circumstances, bad timing, external factors, anything but the truth, because admitting the illusion was never real. That would mean facing how little control they actually had. But you see it now, clearer than ever. And the way their authority weakens when it's not reinforced, the way their influence fades when it's not acknowledged, the way their certainty crumbles when it's challenged without confrontation. You don't need to fight them. Lens. You just need to stop believing in what they think they are. You ever notice how the loud ones always want credit? They need applause, recognition, confirmation that what they're doing matters. Noise is their oxygen. Without it, they start to suffocate. But the real shifts, the ones that rewrite everything, they don't make a sound. They move underneath the surface, where no one's looking, where no one's listening, where outcomes are decided long before anyone realizes a game is even being played. Bond. That's where things started changing for you. Not in some dramatic moment where everything flipped overnight. No explosion. No announcement. Just a quiet alignment. Pieces falling into place without asking for permission. Patterns forming around you, subtle but precise. And suddenly, it's not just you moving anymore. It's like something else joined the process. Something disciplined, focused, relentless in a way that doesn't need attention to function. They can't see it, of course. They're too busy watching for obvious threats. Big moves, loud signals. They're scanning for chaos because that's the only language they understand. But this is different. This is calculated silence. The kind that doesn't reveal itself until it's already done its job. Land, you start noticing how situations shift in your favor without force. Conversations tilt the way you need them to. Opportunities appear where there used to be dead ends. People who once stood in your way, they hesitate now, like something's holding them back. Not fear, exactly. More like uncertainty. Like they can't quite figure out why things aren't working the way they used to. That's not luck. Cleaned that structure. While they were focused on controlling outcomes directly, you started influencing the conditions around those outcomes. You stopped pushing against resistance and began redirecting it. Small adjustments, tiny changes in timing, in response, in presence. Nothing flashy, nothing obvious, but together, they create momentum. And momentum doesn't need permission. It builds, it compounds, it moves forward whether anyone notices or not. And the strange part? The less you try to prove anything, the stronger it becomes. They're still stuck in the mindset of force. They think power means taking, demanding, asserting. But silent forces don't operate like that. They don't argue. They don't announce. They simply position things in a way where the result becomes inevitable. By the time anyone realizes what's happening, it's already too late to change it. You can feel it now. That shift. That presence that wasn't there before. Not loud, not aggressive, but steady. Controlled. Like a current moving beneath everything, guiding direction without needing recognition. And it's unsettling for them. Because they can't fight what they can't see. They can't challenge something that doesn't step into the open. All they can do is react to the outcomes. And by then, The outcomes are already decided. And so they start reaching, trying to regain control, making louder moves, bigger gestures, hoping to shake something loose. But all that does is expose how desperate they've become. Because the more noise they create, the clearer the silence around you feels. You're not overpowering them. You're out-positioning them, and the more they chase visibility, the deeper you move into invisibility. Where real influence lives, where real shifts are made, where everything begins to bend, quietly, precisely, without ever needing to be seen. They thought conflict would be loud, explosive, dramatic, that if anything ever came for them, it would come with warnings, with signals they could detect, threats they could prepare for. That's how they've always imagined it, face to face, force against force, noise against noise. Something they could see, something they could fight back against. But that's not how it happens. Not anymore. Lend. You didn't step into the arena. You didn't announce a challenge. You didn't even acknowledge them the way they expected. And that's where everything started to twist. Because when there's no confrontation, there's nothing to push against. No clear enemy to target. No obvious threat to eliminate. Just a slow, creeping realization that something is changing. And they don't know where it's coming from. They keep looking for you in the wrong places. They expect resistance. Instead, they get silence. They expect retaliation. Instead, they get absence. And that absence begins to eat at them in ways confrontation never could. Because confrontation gives them clarity. It tells them where they stand, what they're up against, how to respond. But this gives them nothing, Rand. So they start filling in the gaps themselves. They imagine scenarios, create problems that may not even exist. Overanalyzed every small shift in behavior, every delayed response, every unexpected outcome. Their own minds become the battlefield. Not because you forced them into it, but because you removed everything that kept them grounded, And once someone starts fighting their own thoughts, they're already losing. You didn't have to break them. Pinned, you let them break themselves. It starts small, a plan that doesn't go the way they expected. A conversation that doesn't give them the control they're used to. A situation that slips just slightly out of their grip. Nothing dramatic, nothing obvious, but enough to plant a seed of doubt, and doubt spreads. They begin questioning their instincts, second-guessing their decisions, hesitating in moments where they used to act without thinking. That hesitation slows them down, makes them predictable in a different way. Not because they're confident in their patterns, but because they're trapped in them. Meanwhile, you've already moved past patterns. Blend. You're not reacting to them anymore. You're not adjusting based on what they do or say. You've stepped, and when someone can't influence your behavior, can't provoke a response, can't even confirm whether they matter in your world, their position starts to weaken because influence requires acknowledged, and you stopped giving it, so they try harder, they escalate, push boundaries, test limits, looking for any sign that they still have an effect on you, any reaction, any emotion, any confirmation that they still exist in your focus. But the more they push, the more they expose how dependent they were on that validation. And that's when the collapse accelerates. And not with a crash, not with a visible breakdown, but with subtle shifts that compound over time. Their decisions become less effective, their presence less commanding, their words carry less weight. People around them start noticing it too, even if they can't explain why. Something feels off. Pemmed like the authority they once had isn't holding anymore, they try to compensate. Speak louder, act stronger, but it doesn't land the same way, because strength that needs to be proven repeatedly isn't strength. It's performance, and performance fades when the audience stops believing in it. You didn't remove them directly. You removed the conditions that allowed them to thrive. No spotlight, no reaction, no friction to push against. Just a quiet shift in the environment where their usual tactics don't work anymore. And without those tactics, they're left exposed, not to you, to themselves. And every weakness they ignored, every flaw they covered up with confidence, every dependency they disguised as control. It all starts surfacing, not because you dragged it out into the open, but because there's nothing left to hide it behind. They're still standing there, technically, still speaking, still moving, still trying to maintain the image they built. But it's hollow now, disconnected from reality, and deep down. They feel it. That slow, uncomfortable awareness that something is slipping away from them, something they can't grab, can't fight, can't even fully understand. Comedy, because there was never a direct confrontation to win, just a silent unraveling they were never prepared for. They were trained to believe strength is visible. Big moves, loud decisions, immediate reactions that make everyone turn their heads and say, "That's power." It's almost adorable, the way they cling to it, like children playing with shadows, convinced they're holding something real. They flex, they push, they force outcomes, thinking raw power is enough to bend the world in their favor. But raw power is impatient. It needs instant results. It thrives on reaction. It demands that things happen now exactly the way it wants. And when it doesn't get that, it cracks, starts making mistakes, starts overreaching. Because force without direction isn't control. It's chaos pretending to be strength. Man, you saw that early? You realized that the strongest person in the room isn't the one who moves first. It's the one who understands when not to move at all. While they were rushing forward, trying to dominate every situation, you started slowing down, watching. Not just what they did, but why they did it. The patterns beneath their behavior, the triggers behind their decisions. Because once you understand patterns, you don't need power, you need timing. They think they're unpredictable because they act fast, because they rely on instinct, on aggression, on presence. But speed doesn't equal unpredictability. In fact, it makes them easier to read. Every reaction becomes a clue. Every emotional shift becomes a signal. They reveal themselves constantly. They just don't realize anyone is paying attention at that level. And you're not reacting to the surface anymore. You're reading the structure underneath, the habits they can't break, the impulses they can't control, the blind spots they don't even know exist. And once you see those things clearly, everything becomes simple. Not easy, simple, because strategy doesn't require force. It requires clarity, the ability to remove emotion from the equation and see the situation as it is, not as it feels. That's where they struggle. They get pulled into the moment. Their ego gets involved. Their need to prove something takes over. And that's when they lose. Not because they're weak, because they're predictable. You don't need to overpower someone who's already showing you their next move. You just need to position yourself correctly, adjust slightly, let them commit to their action, and then let that action work against them. That's the difference. They think winning means pushing harder. And you understand winning means placing yourself where their push becomes irrelevant. Gent. So while they're exhausting themselves trying to control outcomes directly, you're shaping the environment those outcomes depend on. Subtle shifts, quiet adjustments. You don't block their path. You let them walk it, knowing exactly where it leads. And they walk it confidently. That's the best part. They believe they're making strong decisions, decisive moves. But every decision they make is influenced by patterns you've already mapped out. They think they're choosing freely, when in reality, they're following a script they wrote themselves long ago. Brilliant. You're just reading it better than they are. Right? And the deeper you go into that mindset, the less you feel the need to prove anything. Because proof is for people who doubt. And you don't doubt what you understand. MD, they still rely on force because it's visible. Because it gets immediate reactions. Because it creates the illusion of dominance. But strategy operates on a different level. It doesn't need validation. It doesn't need recognition. It works whether anyone sees it or not. And by the time they realize they've been outplayed, there's nothing left to fight. Come the end. No clear mistake to fix. No obvious moment where things went wrong. Just a series of decisions that felt right at the time, leading to an outcome they never expected. Damns, they'll try to trace it back, look for the turning point. But they won't find it. Banned because there wasn't one single moment. It was a process, a quiet, consistent application of thought over impulse, meaned understanding over reaction, positioning over force, and once that process takes hold, raw power starts to look exactly like what it is. Desperation dressed up as strength. They thought attention was something you chased, something you begged for, fought for, competed over like scraps on the floor. Likes, reactions, validation. Little flashes of approval to keep them feeling alive. They built their entire identity around being seen, around being noticed, around making noise loud enough that no one could ignore them. And you tried that once, didn't you? Didn't feel right, because deep down you understood something they didn't. Attention that's forced fades. It burns fast, loud, and then disappears just as quickly. It needs constant feeding, constant performance, constant effort just to maintain the illusion that it matters. But then something shifted. You stopped trying to be seen. And somehow you became impossible to ignore. Not because you got louder, because you got sharper, more precise in how you move, how you speak, how you exist in a space without needing to dominate it. And that precision, it travels quiet at first, almost invisible, but it spreads. One person notices, then another, not because you asked them to, but because there's something different about you they can't quite explain. Leaned. That's how the circle begins. Not a crowd, not a fan base. A circle. Lend a network of attention that forms naturally, without force, without manipulation. It builds on curiosity, on intrigue, on the simple fact that when something feels real, people lean toward it. They want to understand it. Be near it, be part of it, and the more you ignore it, the stronger it grows. Blind. Because you're not performing for it. You're not feeding it with desperation. You're just existing within it and letting it expand on its own. They don't understand that. They still think visibility comes from effort, from pushing content, from chasing trends, from trying to stay relevant in a system that rewards noise over substance. And for a while it works. They get attention, temporary spikes, quick reactions, but it's shallow. It doesn't hold. It doesn't evolve, your circle does. It adapts, grows, deepens over time. Because it's not built on what you show. It's built on what people feel when they come across you. That unspoken recognition that there's something more beneath the surface, something controlled, something intentional, and intention spreads faster than noise. Now they're watching, quietly at first, trying to understand where this attention is coming from, why people are starting to shift toward you without any obvious reason, why conversations start circling back to your presence, your moves, your silence. It confuses them, plenty, because there's no clear trigger, no viral moment they can point to, no single action they can copy. Just a steady rise they can't interrupt, so they try to replicate it, start mimicking behaviors, adopting similar tones, trying to create the same kind of intrigue, but it doesn't land because they're still approaching it from the outside, trying to imitate something that only works when it's real. And reality can't be copied, it has to be built. You didn't create this circle overnight. It formed as a byproduct of who you became when you stopped needing approval, when you stopped reacting to every little thing, when you started moving with clarity instead of impulse. People feel that, even if they can't explain it, especially then, because the strongest signals are the ones that don't need explanation. They just exist, and people adjust around them. Now the circle is active, alive, and watching, sharing, expanding in ways you don't even track. And that's what makes it powerful, Lambert. You're not controlling it directly. You're influencing it by simply being consistent in how you move. And while they're still trying to manufacture attention, you've become a source of it. Not loud, not obvious, calmed, but constant. And constant is what turns attention into something much more dangerous than they realize, obsessed with being noticed. Every move calculated to draw eyes, every word shaped to trigger reactions, every action designed to prove something to someone. It's exhausting just that constant hunger for validation, for acknowledgement, for proof that they exist in the minds of others. They think visibility is power, that if enough people see them, hear them, talk about them, they've won, ma'am. But being noticed is fragile. It depends on attention that can disappear the moment something louder comes along. It relies on people choosing to look, choosing to care, choosing to stay engaged. And people are unpredictable, distracted, always searching for the next thing. So they keep performing, louder, bigger, more desperate, with every attempt to hold on to something that was never stable to begin with. Emma, you stepped away from that, not all at once. At first, it felt strange, almost uncomfortable, like you were fading into the background while everyone else was pushing forward, grabbing attention, demanding recognition. It looked like they were winning. It felt like you were falling behind, but you weren't. You were detaching, and detachment changes everything because the moment you stop needing to be seen, you start seeing clearly. You're no longer influenced by how things appear. You're not chasing reactions or adjusting yourself to fit expectations. You begin operating on a different frequency entirely, one where your actions aren't driven by approval, but by intention. Pammed. That's where inevitability begins, not in the spotlight. Mend, in the quiet consistency of movement that doesn't break under pressure, doesn't shift under opinion, doesn't collapse when ignored. You become steady in a way that doesn't need validation, and that steadiness, it builds slowly at first, almost invisible. Found they don't notice it because they're too busy chasing immediate results. Quick wins, fast attention. They measure success in moments. You've started measuring it in direction, and direction doesn't care about speed. It cares about alignment. So while they're sprinting in circles, you're moving forward. Every step intentional. Every decision connected to something bigger than the moment itself. No wasted motion. No reaction without purpose. And over time, that creates something they can't replicate. Momentum. Not the kind that spikes and crashes. Mend. The kind that compounds, that builds layer by layer, becoming harder to stop with every passing moment. And the more it builds, the less effort it takes to maintain, because it's no longer about pushing, it's about continuing. That's when they start noticing, not because you tried to get their attention, but because your presence becomes impossible to ignore. It's not loud, it doesn't demand focus, but it's there. Consistent, unshaken, moving forward while everything else around it fluctuates. They feel it before they understand it. Linged, that quiet pressure of something advancing without needing approval, without asking permission, without reacting to anything they do. And that unsettles them because they're used to influence being visible, measurable, something they can analyze, respond to, control. But this doesn't give them anything to work with. No clear pattern to disrupt. No obvious weakness to exploit. Just movement, steady, uninterrupted, and the more they try to interfere, the more irrelevant they become, because inevitability doesn't engage. It doesn't stop to argue or prove a point. It doesn't slow down to address every distraction. It continues, relentless in its direction, unaffected by noise, untouched by the need for recognition. That's what separates you now. Not talent, not luck, consistency without dependence. You're no longer tied to outcomes in the way they are. You're tied to process, to the way you move, the way you think, the way you respond or don't respond to what's happening around you. And that makes you dangerous in a way they can't define, because you're not trying to win moments. Pilend. You're building something that wins over time. Something that doesn't collapse under pressure because it wasn't built for attention in the first place. Bane. It was built to continue, and once something reaches that state, where stopping it would require more force than letting it move, it stops being noticeable. It becomes inevitable.